discover the incredible message from my sister. Stay home for our perfect day. An unexpected disruption in a carpenter's life. Jack stared at his phone, the words illuminated like a lighthouse in an unsettled sea. Stay home for our perfect day. Emily's text sounded insistent, cheeky even, yet as he read it again, an unsettling weight settled in his stomach. The imagery of hammers falling silent and sawdust, settling on the workshop floor, twisted his gut. It felt reckless, like tossing aside his safety net while waves crashed closer. He hoisted his shoulder against the familiar wooden beam, feeling every pound of expectation and duty he had swallowed for the last few years. In this small Midwestern town, he was the last ember of a legacy, his father's legacy, forged through countless hours shaping wood into art. How could he dare abandon that for a fleeting whim? As bills stacked and the business limped along, the threat of failure gnawed at him. He hesitated, his heart racing against a backdrop of guilt mixed with yearning. How could he coax his weary spirit to choose joy over obligation? Staring out through the workshop window, shadows of his dreams loomed larger. The art he'd once envisioned creating, the laughter shared with Emily as they played in their father's warm, fragrant space. This was all a distant memory masked by saw blades and the splinters of responsibility. Then, as if fate heard his struggle, an alarming message fluttered through his mind. Emily's classroom. Just that afternoon, she had mentioned a burst pipe, a disaster a few days before the spring exhibition. Panic gripped his chest like a vice. Instinct surged, kindling that familiar urge to protect his sister, to shield her dreams from the storm. "I can't leave her in chaos," he mumbled. Jack could feel his heart hammering, a thrum of something like adrenaline. It was reckless, yes, a departure from all reasonisms. But this was Emily. She needed him. The thought of her facing that flood alone, of a classroom filled with irreplaceable artwork and trembling hopes, tipped the scale entirely. Suddenly, the hammering of nails felt outweighed by the urgency to reclaim what they both held dear. Before he could question further, he declared a day off to assist her. But the same sinking fear unfurled in the pit of his stomach. Would he betray their father's memory by stepping away, even just one day? Lose himself in art again, which people like him didn't have the luxury for? An assortment of self-doubt cascaded through his mind, jagged like fractured wood. And in those fraught moments, while pushing aside tools and timber, he couldn't shake a single haunting thought. Could his desire for a brighter future stem from a desire to abandon those he loved? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he hurried across the town, tension hung in the air, blurring his intent. Entering the muddled art classroom, he caught sight of Emily's eyes widening in surprise and relief. Yet amid the chaos of tipped paint and scattered supplies, the familiar tug of family warmth and joy cascaded upwards. Laughter rolled between the siblings like the sound of hammers at work. The discovery of their father's hidden sketchbook and the vibrant sketches within began to stretch the cracks in Jack's heart wide open. Yet as the day wore on, an escalating fear intertwined with inspiration. Was he merely patching holes in his sister's crisis, or was he flirting with his own abandoned dreams? The underlying tension, built with each brushstroke, and with their laughter echoing around him, he stood on the cusp of something monumental, yet suffocating. Every sentiment screamed for his attention, a call to reclaim joy, and fear of losing the very essence of his father's legacy. Among the art supplies strewn about, Jack could feel the walls closing in, He was not merely confronted by a burst pipe in a classroom, but rather the looming thought of who he could become versus who he was expected to be. The workshop lights flickered in his mind, their warmth competing with the chill of uncertainty. Would he dare step into this new realm, risking everything? What awaited him in this shadow of revolution? The weight of his silent anguish thrummed along with his heart, pinning him between commitment and the enticing call of passion. The setting sun cast an orange glow, leaving Jack, like a canvas, splattered with unanswered questions. Jack's heartbeat synchronized with the chaotic rhythm of Emily's classroom, a disarray of colors and abandoned projects that mirrored the tumult inside him. Beneath the thick layer of debris, remnants of their father's spirit whispered, urging him to bridge the chasm that had formed between his duties and his dreams. As the siblings worked side by side, Jack's hands moved instinctively, mixing paints and rearranging furniture. Each action was an act of defiance against the suffocating expectations he felt. But each stroke of the brush also carried the weight of unresolved emotions. The tension between the legacy of craftsmanship and the freedom of expression grew palpable. Jack struggled to reconcile these conflicting parts of himself, despite enjoying the creativity that unfurled in Emily's presence. Laughter punctuated the air, warm and vibrant, breaking the dam of unease he had tightly sealed. Yet, in the back of his mind, nagging thoughts pressed through. Was he merely playing the role of the elder brother now, engaging to ease guilt rather than to foster genuine passion? The thought felt like a splinter lodged deep within. He could no longer ignore it. Amid a whirl of inspiration, he caught sight of their father's sketches, inked in meticulous lines. The world in those pages pulsated with life. "This was the vision he had for us," Jack murmured, turning to Emily, her eyes alight as she examined the sketches. But the stark realization swept over him. His father's wishes had been misplaced in his quest for survival. Could he reclaim that vision? We need to do something meaningful today, not just fix the mess," he asserted, his voice echoing a newfound resolve. "Let's bring one of these ideas to life." Emily's excitement ignited something within him, a flicker that had long been extinguished. "What do you have in mind?" she replied, curiosity sparking beneath the surface. Jack scanned the chaotic room, his thoughts racing through their father's work. If they combined art with craftsmanship, it could breathe new life into everything he had once feared losing. What if we create a piece for the exhibition that pays tribute to him? Something that captures the intertwining of sculpture and painting, a soul of sorts that tells our story? He could see the wheels turning in Emily's mind and watched her contemplate the endless possibilities. His heart swelled with a fragile hope that shimmered through the fear. This felt like an epiphany, one that urged him to embrace the flux rather than retreat into familiarity. But as they began sketching ideas together, doubts clawed at him. Was he capable of stepping away from mere survival into the realm of genuine artistic expression? The project swiftly transformed from a distraction to a canvas upon which to project their intertwined dreams. Jack felt liberated as they discussed techniques, colors, and textures, their combined energy elevating the chaos around them into vivid creativity. Yet the thin threads of terror still clung to him. What if he failed? What if this venture derailed everything he had worked for? With their father's sketches strewn about as inspiration, Jack emerged from the shadows of indecision. The clutter no longer felt overwhelming. Instead, it seemed to call him forth. They began gathering materials, and with each piece they selected, the oppressive weight of responsibility gradually splintered into excitement, and the idea of creating something transcendent became a reality. As they worked, the classroom soared. It transformed into a vibrant workshop of color and vision. Jack felt the flicker inside him swell into flame, igniting dormant desires, yet the fear of what came next lingered like paint on his fingers. What would happen once this day came to a close? Would he extinguish this spark with a return to duty, Or would he allow himself to chase this burgeoning passion onward, despite what others might say? The shadows deepened, illuminating the art they were creating, but also the uncertainty that lurked beyond their little sanctuary. As the paints mixed brightly on the palette and the shared laughter echoed, Jack stood at a crossroads, with courage trembling in his chest and the whisper of dreams becoming louder. But as dusk painted the classroom in shades of uncertainty, one question remained. Could he transform this fleeting moment of inspiration into a lasting part of who he was becoming? Jack's fingers trembled slightly as he dipped the brush into the vibrant paint, mixing it carefully with the others on the palette. With each stroke, he felt the remnants of his father's influence enveloping him, yet a strange empowerment began to blossom within. The rich hues came alive on the canvas, merging like the scattered fragments of his identity, a creator, a nurturer, a brother, and now, perhaps, an artist. As the classroom transformed into a sanctuary of art, doubts began to swirl with the colors. The cacophony of emotions from his recent epiphanies merged with the chaos in the room. It became a vivid reflection of his internal struggle. Every laugh from Emily rang like a clarity bell, urging him to shape this moment, yet the fear lingered. He felt suspended, teetering between aspiration and self-preservation. Could he genuinely embrace this burgeoning passion, or would he retreat into the proverbial safety of his responsibilities? "Jack, how about we try layering the colors?" Emily suggested, her voice imbued with enthusiasm. "It'll give depth to the sculpture." "Right," he replied, though his mind was racing. Layering felt symbolic of his own journey, each layer built upon his father's legacy, past fears, and newfound determination. Yet, would layering allow him to maintain the balance, or would it reveal the fragility of his creations? As she began working on one side of the canvas, Jack lost himself in thought, contemplating the weight of expectations that had overshadowed him for so long. The notion that he might expand his artistic expression felt both liberating and daunting. Would this artistic pursuit bring him closer to understanding himself or strip away the security he had built? "What if we make the sculpture represent the elements of us?" Jack proposed tentatively, turning to Emily for agreement. "Like how different colors can represent aspects of our lives, our struggles, our joys." Emily's eyes sparkled. "Yes, like the blue for the calm we find in our memories and the red for the passion we're feeling now." Within her excitement, Jack sensed a shared experience, but also a mirroring of conflicting emotions. As they wove their stories into the canvas, he understood that confronting his fears and insecurities was not only important for his personal growth, but critical in completing their tribute to their father. Yet, the shadows of apprehension loomed larger. What if, amid the layers of art, he uncovered truths that were too demanding to face? Could genuine expression unravel the carefully constructed narrative of brotherhood? Just as those thoughts began to form tendrils of doubt, a small voice inside him screamed that the time had come to confront his anxieties. "Maybe we should invite someone to see it once we finish," Jack suggested, suddenly feeling a mix of thrill and dread. The idea of exposing their creation felt like a leap into the unknown, a necessary step in aligning himself with this new passion. Emily paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face, but her determination shone through. "You mean share it? But what if they don't understand?" "But what if they do?" Jack countered, adrenaline coursing through him. "This is our voice, and we have every right to share it. It could be the push we need to let the world in." Her hesitation faltered, replaced by a seed of excitement. "Okay, let's promise one another that we won't let fear hold us back." They clasped hands, and in that moment, an unspoken pact was formed. Jack felt a rush of warmth wash over him, the bonds of brotherhood strengthening with the burden of honesty. As the night deepened, their laughter intertwined with the echo of unresolved fears. Jack painted with fervor, yet a nagging question continued to loop in his mind. Once they shared their creation, How would it reflect on who they were? And were they prepared for either acceptance or rejection? With each stroke of paint and calculated gesture, Jack began to realize that this journey was more than an artistic endeavor. It was an odyssey of self-discovery. But a shadow of apprehension still lingered in the corners of his consciousness, mocking his newfound resolve. The trusting silence that enveloped them drew Jack to a sobering conclusion. They stood on the precipice of something much greater than art. The canvas awaited its unveiling, but the question loomed larger. Would their art be a celebration of triumph or an echo of their fears? Jack's brush met the canvas with renewed fervor, but the vibrant colors now seemed muted, overshadowed by the gnawing uncertainty reverberating in his mind. He could feel the brush trembling beneath his fingertips, overwhelmed by the gravity of their undertaking. Each stroke felt like a decision, weighty with the implications of what lay before them. The pact was forged, a promise to defy the fear that had kept him tethered for too long, yet the struggle to break free still loomed large. "What do you think it means to really share our work?" he asked Emily, seeking a foothold on this path of vulnerability. She paused, her brush hovering in the air, contemplating his question deeply. "I think it's about embracing what we've created, letting it reflect our truths," she responded, her voice steady yet filled with a contemplative hum. "And whether they understand or appreciate it is secondary. It's more about being brave enough to lay our hearts bare." Jack's heart raced at the thought. He wanted to share, to connect. But what if the truth they laid bare exposed the fractures he'd been so careful to conceal? Bursts of color danced in the studio, yet Jack felt ensnared by shadows of doubt, a reminder of his father's expectations pressing down on his shoulders. Suddenly, an idea flickered in his mind, cutting through the fog like a beam of light. "What if we didn't just show it to our classmates?" he suggested. "What if we invited our family? They need to see how far we've come, how we've transformed all this pain into something beautiful." He felt a spark of excitement as the words left his lips. It was risky, a potential for rejection that gripped him. But perhaps this was precisely what he needed, a concrete bridge to traverse the gap between his father's legacy and his own burgeoning identity. Emily's eyes widened, recognizing the significance of his proposition. "That could be something special, Jack." Her smile radiated warmth, imbuing him with determination. "But are you prepared? Exposing our vulnerability to family can be even more daunting than classmates." Jack nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. Invitations could be met with critical eyes instead of understanding. His mother, who had always favored practicality over creativity, might never appreciate the emotional depth behind their work. Yet, he knew that if he could weather that storm, perhaps he would emerge stronger, more distinct, more authentically himself. "I guess that gives us the motivation to really refine our piece," he said, almost to reassure himself. "We need to put everything we have into it, all the joy and pain, and then let it go." As the days passed, the studio became a crucible of emotions. Each brushstroke deepened their connection to the artwork and to each other. Jack discovered hidden abilities he hadn't realized he possessed. He challenged himself to experiment with shapes and textures, blending techniques that seemed obscure even a week ago. Striking bold outlines juxtaposed with soft washes of color began to reflect the tumult of his internal revelations. He was not just mimicking his father's artistic style, but forging his own. But amid this explosion of creativity, Jack grappled with the subtle shifts of self-doubt. There were moments when the form he was creating felt unrecognizable, as if the rawness of their emotions was spilling unruly onto the canvas. Would the emotional release set him free, or leave him more entangled in the shadows of his past? The night before their family reveal, Jack hardly slept. Thoughts raced through his mind like fireflies in the dark, illuminating the possibilities and the dangers ahead. He could envision the canvas, vibrant, chaotic, yet eerily beautiful. But what would they say? What if his truth wasn't understood? It dawned on him that they stood not just at an artistic crossroads, but at a personal one that demanded he choose between what he thought was expected and what his heart truly desired. As dawn broke over the horizon, a mix of resolve and dread settled within him, igniting the anticipation for the day ahead. The moment of truth arrived. Jack stood in front of the completed piece, feeling the weight of every brushstroke resonate within. His heart raced, but so did the thrill of finally letting the world see the layers of his emergence. Could he hold on to his newfound identity, or was he still a prisoner to the past? With a shaky breath, he gathered his family and prepared for the unveiling. Would their reactions thrust him forward or pull him back into his old identity? The answer awaited just beyond the canvas, and the question lingered. Was he ready for what lay on the other side? As Jack stood in front of the canvas, the weight of anticipation bore down on him like a storm cloud pregnant with rain. The vibrant colors, once a source of inspiration, now felt like a churning sea of emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. "Ready?" Emily asked, her voice a gentle balm in the thick silence. Jack nodded, though uncertainty twisted in his gut. It wasn't just the fear of rejection that pushed against him. It was the fear of being seen for who he truly was, a vulnerability he didn't fully understand yet. He could hear the faint murmur of his family outside, their laughter a stark contrast to the internal chaos he felt. Would they be able to see the story woven into each brushstroke? Or would they judge him harshly, reinforcing the fears he had harbored for so long? He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, anchoring himself in the present. The mission was clear: to unveil not just a painting, but a part of himself that he had fought hard to uncover. The thought invigorated him. This reveal could redefine his existence, could transport him from the shadows of expectation into a realm of authenticity. As the door swung open, Jack's heart raced. Faces filled the room, each eager expression varying between curiosity and skepticism. His father stood at the front, eyebrows drawn tight, like a figure carved from marble, demanding and unyielding. Keeping his breathing steady, Jack took a deliberate step forward, positioning himself beside the canvas. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice surprisingly firm. "What you're about to see represents a journey, one filled with pain, discovery, and hope." He felt Emily's presence beside him, her silent encouragement infusing him with a manageable courage. With a swift motion, he revealed the painting, its colors erupting like a riot on the canvas, encapsulating a whirlwind of emotion. Gasps followed, their initial reactions mingled with awe and confusion. Jack's father shifted, trying to decipher meaning amidst the chaos of hues. Jack's mind raced as he searched his father's face, grappling with the expectations clashing violently against the very essence of expression he was trying to convey. "What is this supposed to be?" His father's voice cut through the silence, directly striking at Jack's core. The underlying accusation lingered in the air, like a thick fog resisting the dawn. This is me. It's all of us. It's about transformation, about taking the darkness, and... "I just don't understand how this represents anything," his father interrupted, disdain creeping into his tone. The warmth from earlier faded into a chilling reality. Jack clenched his fists, feeling the familiar tug of despair gripping his thoughts. "Maybe that's the point," Emily interjected, her voice unyielding, yet resonating with compassion. "It's not about understanding, it's about feeling. Art doesn't always need to be defined." Jack felt a flicker of gratitude towards Emily, who dared to protect the delicate strands of vulnerability he had woven. The contrast between their viewpoints left an electric tension in the air. "What have you done with your talent?" his father pressed, frustration clear in his gaze. Behind the anger was a flicker of worry. Jack could sense it, a worry that perhaps he wouldn't follow the path his father had laid out for him. Swiftly, Jack became defensively aware of the weight of his choice. To share a truth that could fracture the very foundation of familial love. The painting was both an offering and a gauntlet thrown down in a precarious power struggle. "What if this is not my only identity?" Jack challenged, the realization igniting within him. What if there's more to me than what you see? Silence enveloped the room as all eyes turned to Jack, the air thick with unspoken truths. In that moment, clarity pierced through the haze of doubt, revealing a pathway he had never considered, standing firm in his understanding of himself, regardless of whether approval followed. With his heart pounding louder than the cicadas outside, Jack awaited his family's reactions, 1,000 endless thoughts cascading through his mind. Would this embrace of honesty fortify his identity or dismantle it entirely? In that heart-stopping silence, Jack felt an undeniable shift. The tumult of fear and excitement converged, paving the way for a larger revelation. He took a breath, ready to confront whatever lay ahead, questioning not just what they would say, but what he would choose to believe about himself moving forward. And so, the question lingered in the balance. With so many paths stretching out before him, which one would he dare to walk? Jack held the weight of the moment in his hands, feeling the tension in the air crackle like static. Eyes fixated on him, each gaze felt like a blade probing at the vulnerabilities he had just laid bare. He could sense his father's disappointment weaving an invisible net cast over him, but he also noticed a flicker in his mother's eyes, a mixture of pride and shock that fed his resolve. "I want to grow, not just as an artist, but as a person," he continued, pushing past the initial sting of opposition. "This painting is a testament to the messiness of life, all the layers of who I am." His voice steadied, infused with a surge of inner strength he hadn't known was there. Jack's father frowned, arms crossed tightly, his silence more palpable than words. The man was a fortress, but Jack wondered how long he could withstand the force of his conviction. He felt a stirring to challenge this fortress, to dismantle it brick by brick within the limits of respect. The fear of disappointing either parent now shifted into a badge of honor, worn bravely against the potential criticism that hung ominously. "That's not how talent works," his father finally said, each word a careful selection, as if he were arranging the pieces of an intricate puzzle. "You need to harness it, focus on what gets you ahead." "Maybe that's why I'm not happy," Jack shot back, the bitterness creeping into his tone despite his effort for composure. "I've been hiding behind expectations my whole life. This isn't just about painting, it's my existence calling for authenticity." Emily stepped closer, her presence a solid anchor. The warmth from her support chased away the chill surrounding him and added a quiet intensity to his burgeoning confidence. He turned toward his family, searching each face intently, yet feeling more as if he were searching for acceptance rather than understanding. "What's wrong with just being ordinary?" his mother interjected softly, her voice unexpectedly fragile. "Why can't you pursue something that feels secure?" "Because," Jack replied, swallowing down the knot forming in his throat, "being ordinary has never felt like who I am." It was painful to admit that their definitions of success and security didn't resonate with the contours of his aspirations. Was seeking a different path an act of rebellion or a journey toward self-discovery? The line blurred as he looked at the people he wanted to accept him most. Jack could tell he had entered dangerous territory, but he felt a desperate urge to venture deeper. "If I never share this side of myself, the real me, I'll wither," he insisted, feeling the truth resonate deep within him. Around the room, conflicting emotions played out on each face. Uncertainty brushed against admiration, like colors blending on his canvas. Would his family ever truly understand him? Or would the beautiful chaos of his truth always seem like a foreign language? "Maybe you're not the one who needs to change," Emily said gently, drawing Jack's attention back to her. "What if they learn from you instead?" The implication of her words hung delicately in the air, urging him to transcend pain for a moment of potential clarity. Jack took a step back, his heart pounding even harder as he pondered her suggestion. The idea of flipping the narrative excited him, though questions swirled in his mind. Was he strong enough to reclaim his identity, one that had been molded by others' expectations? As he stood tall, determination ignited within him. He wasn't just an artist, he was a storyteller, determined to weave his life into a tapestry of authenticity. With every heartbeat, he felt truth warming his veins, emboldening him against the tides of fear. Suddenly, his father's gaze softened for a split second, revealing the flicker of vulnerability residing behind the stoic exterior. But would his father's shifting demeanor push Jack further into growth or force him back into the cocoon of comfort? The room split into silence again, but instead of retreating into trepidation, Jack leaned into both the pressure and the possibility unfurling before him. With a grounding breath, he prepared for the next step, ready to discover his own narrative amidst the chaos. What new path would reveal itself once the facade of expectation shattered? Would it reveal not just his artistry, but the essence of who he truly was? Jack felt the silence reverberate around him, a canvas stripped bare, awaiting fresh splashes of color. He sensed the shifting currents of emotions among his family, each moment suspended as he contemplated the weight of responsibility that accompanied his truth. The conversation, once a battleground, morphed into a window of opportunity for self-exploration. How many times had he stifled his voice, dimming his authenticity to fit the mold of what others expected? A spark of defiance ignited in Jack's core. He would not allow fear to dictate his choices any longer. He turned to face his father again, seeing the lines etched on his face. A sudden urge to show him the soul behind the facade deepened within him. "Do you ever feel trapped, Dad? Like you're living someone else's life?" The question hung in the air, daring his father to engage or retreat behind the walls he had built so expertly. Uncertainty flickered on his father's face, like the glint of light on water. Was it a moment of acknowledgement, or was he simply caught off guard? Jack's resolve hardened at the sight, pushing him to keep going. "I'm learning to embrace uncertainty. Isn't that what art is about? Capturing fleeting moments, the rawness of what it means to be alive?" He was urging his family to see his vision and understand that this passion was woven with threads of authenticity that tied him to his very existence. His mother shifted uncomfortably, the worry lines on her forehead deepening. "But what if you fail? What if you end up with nothing to show for it?" she asked, her voice trembling with maternal instinct. Jack took a breath. Her fears resonated within him. He shared them, yet something had changed. The urgency to find his voice overtook the fear of failure. "What if I find something deeper, a passion that connects me to who I am?" His words felt like a brushstroke applied with conviction, bold and defiant. As he navigated this exchange with them, he felt like an artist covering uncharted territory, unafraid of the possibility of missteps along the way. Emily's earlier words echoed in his mind, igniting a new perspective. Perhaps he could help his family understand the tapestry he sought to weave out of his life's experiences. With every word, Jack sensed a shift in the atmosphere, the weight of expectation beginning to lighten. "Maybe we can learn from each other," he proposed. "If I'm true to myself, it might open a door for all of us to see what could be possible beyond the confines of our own fears." There was an unsettling thrill in making that assertion, as if he had uncovered a hidden landscape of possibilities. Would they really be open to the revelation? He felt the need to push further, to strip away more layers of misunderstanding. Suddenly, he wanted to create not just his artwork, but a sense of shared understanding. "Let's take this journey together. Let me bring you into my world, and maybe you can show me yours. I believe in the power of honesty and vulnerability. That's just as crucial as the talent I hone." As Jack's words hung in the air, the room felt alive with unspoken potential. His father's eyes met his, uncertainty replaced by something deeper, a flicker of contemplation. He wondered if this would be the turning point, not just for him, but for them all, a shift from expectation to acceptance. And then, without warning, his phone buzzed, breaking the tension. The message displayed on the screen sent a tremor through him. Jack, we need to talk about the exhibition. It's not just about the art anymore. Suddenly, his heart raced, recognizing that the crossroads he stood at extended beyond his family and seeped into the very fabric of his artistic journey. What revelation awaited him in this next conversation, and how would it impact the narrative he was so desperately trying to craft? Jack's heart thumped loudly against his chest, each beat reflecting a different thread of anxiety and anticipation. The words, "not just about the art anymore," looped in his mind, mingling with the echoes of the previous discussion. Those words hinted at a deeper significance, one that could shatter the fragile equilibrium he had begun to construct with his family. He needed to prepare himself, not just emotionally, but mentally and artistically, for whatever was to come. He glanced at his family, their faces now tight with curiosity and concern. "I have to take this," he said, his voice steadier than he felt, excusing himself from their gathering. He stepped into the quieter confines of his studio, where unfinished canvases loomed like specters awaiting resurrection. This was his sanctuary, and he felt comforted by the chaos of paintbrushes and half-started creations. After a few breaths, Jack opened the message. It was from Elena, his sister, the ambitious one, always practical, often pushing him to be realistic about his dreams. "We need to talk," she had texted. The underlying urgency pulled him in, hinting at serious discussions brimming with the unresolved tension of their past. "What does she want?" he murmured to himself, half expecting the answer to unfold before his eyes like the canvas he stared at. A crush of doubt settled over him, mingled with the flicker of determination he had embraced earlier. Moments ago, he had felt empowered to seek understanding, yet now he stifled his breath as he imagined the impending confrontation. Elena entered minutes later, her presence a stark contrast to the chaos surrounding them. She stood poised and collected, as if she had long rehearsed this moment, while Jack felt like an improvisational actor floundering on stage. "Hey, Jack," she started, the warm tone of her voice failing to diffuse the tension. "I don't want to interrupt what you've got going on, but I really think we need to discuss your exhibition. What you're planning." "What about it?" he asked, his defensiveness surfacing. This was his art, his voice. He felt cornered, as though he were being pushed to relinquish control over his narrative. "I just think we need to be pragmatic about this. You can't just rely on feelings. There's a market to think about," she replied, her eyes narrowing slightly as she scrutinized his reaction. "We're talking about your future here. What does this mean for your career?" Jack's heart blazed with frustration. "Elena, what does it matter if I'm not being true to myself? This exhibition is about more than the art. It's about who I am. Don't you get it?" The intensity of his response caught both of them off guard. Silence enveloped the studio for a moment, and he could sense the weight of their shared history bubbling to the surface. Elena's brows knitted together, a tapestry of concern mixed with something deeper, possibly resentment or confusion. "I do understand, but I also know the world we live in," she said, her voice steadier than before, as if reinforcing a wall. "What happens if you pour everything into this and it flops? I believe in your talent, but believing isn't enough. You need strategy." "Strategy?" Jack echoed, a skeptically raised eyebrow challenging her assumptions. "Isn't the very essence of art about breaking those boundaries? Why can't I explore failure? Why can't I take the leap?" Elena softened, realizing that this was not just a conversation about logistics, but a graphic depiction of Jack's inner turmoil. "I want you to succeed, Jack. I'm afraid of watching you fall." Her confession struck a nerve. He could feel the tug-of-war of emotions, his desire for authenticity pitted against the practical standards they had all been raised to uphold. Jack stepped back, needing to draw clarity from the turmoil. "Maybe we need to talk about what success looks like for both of us," he proposed, weighing the words carefully. "It's not just about the art or the career, it's about what resonates within us. I want you to understand that." "What are you saying?" Elena spoke, hesitant yet searching, perhaps for a bridge between their opposing views. He paused, heart racing, knowing he was standing on the precipice of revelation that could change everything. Maybe it's time we redefine success, not just for me, but for everyone. Elena's expression shifted, curiosity mingling with resolve, as new possibilities began to unfurl between them. The conversation could lead to a shared understanding or further divide them. He felt that tension coiling tightly in the air. "Let's just see where this leads us," she finally offered, uncertainty lacing her voice. As Jack stared at her, he couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was the first stroke of paint on a canvas waiting to evolve. What would it mean to collaborate in redefining their paths and values? The challenge loomed ahead. Would they courageously face the truth together, or would their differing perspectives push them apart irrevocably? Jack's mind buzzed with a cacophony of thoughts as he processed Elena's tentative agreement to explore their shared understanding of success. It sparked a flicker of hope within him, yet doubt mercilessly gnawed at the edges. He hadn't intended to provoke such a potentially transformative discussion, nor had he imagined that a single conversation could act as the catalyst for both their careers. With his sister still contemplating the implications of their exchange, Jack's gaze drifted to the walls of his studio. Each unfinished canvas held fragments of unfulfilled dreams and artistic frustration. He chuckled lightly, realizing that while he was ready to explore authenticity on a grand scale, he hadn't applied that same daring spirit to each blank surface waiting for his brush. Wasn't he asking for the same fearlessness he craved from others? "Do you think artists always know what they want?" Jack asked, hoping to lighten the introspection creeping in around them. Elena's response was thoughtful, signaling she was still wholly invested in their dialogue. "Not at all. Sometimes the best work comes from uncertainty. But knowing yourself is crucial. You're taking a risk, and I admire that, but we need practical steps to harness your vision." Jack leaned back against the cold surface of the easel, contemplating her words. Maybe he had been skirting the issue, clinging to the romanticized notion of art as a purely emotional expression. He had chosen to sever the connection between his creative endeavors and the tangible world. It was a tendency he had inherited from years of praise and validation, but far less from scrutiny that demanded results. "Practical steps," he muttered, testing the phrase on his lips. It felt foreign. "What does that even look like for me? I've never had a guide to tell me how to be a successful artist beyond instinct." "Let's break it down." Elena took a step closer, her businesslike attitude firm yet encouraging. "What are your strongest pieces? What theme resonates most with your audience? You need to evaluate your past work to understand where to go next." The suggestion sounded almost demoralizing, yet it flickered with unfamiliar excitement. Jack had always viewed analysis with distrust, fearing it would suffocate the raw magic of creating. But perhaps, just perhaps, weaving strategy into his artistic journey could unlock unexplored potential. "All right," he said slowly, adopting a tone of resolve. "Let's do it. I'll compile my portfolio and we can dissect it. What about the themes? What if those core feelings are all that matters?" Elena smiled, a hint of relief shining through her initial stern demeanor. "Exactly. We'll start there. I think you might be surprised by what you discover. Remember, understanding your audience can help you speak more powerfully through your art." "Right," he replied, carrying the weight of acceptance and resistance. It felt like a burgeoning partnership. Each twist and turn could redefine them, and yet it made him uneasy. Once he opened this door, there would be no shutting it. As they began sorting through his works, Jack felt a flicker of apprehension. The more he revealed, the more vulnerable he could become. What if the exploration ended up overshadowing what he loved about the act of creation? The thought sent a jolt of fear through him, but Jack steeled himself against it. "Okay, let's start here," he announced, gesturing to a piece that encapsulated confusion and longing. "This one really resonates with me. A reflection on isolation, I think. Maybe it speaks louder than I realize. Elena stepped closer, eyes gleaming with determination. Let's find out what it says. I believe this could lead us somewhere groundbreaking for you. The door swung open, but Jack felt the slightest twinge of rebellion tugging at his gut. He was on the brink of a journey that could redefine his entire approach to creation, yet the fear of losing his artistic essence loomed heavy. The tension rested in the air, pregnant with unspoken vulnerability. How much of himself would he have to expose to engage with this new narrative? As they continued, Jack knew it wasn't merely about uncovering artistic depths anymore. It was a battle against the internal chains he had crafted. What revelations awaited him as he peeled back the layers, and how would they change the very fabric of his identity? The weight hung there, heavy and electric, as Jack watched his sister's eyes flicker with anticipation and hope. Their shared journey had initiated something powerful. Now the question was whether he was ready to let his art and his truth intertwine in an unprecedented way. Jack stood in his follow-up studio session, a newfound determination radiating from him as he surveyed the organized chaos before him. His heart pounded louder than the morose thrum of self-doubt that had once held him prisoner. The canvases lined the walls, a testament to both past struggles and realizations. He could feel the rich tapestry of his experiences beginning to interweave in complex and beautiful ways. In this moment of clarity, Jack lifted a brush and squeezed vibrant paint from the tubes. For each stroke he made, he felt the duality of pressure, one from his family's expectations, and the other from the unstoppable urge to embrace his artistry. This incredibly liberating tension served not to suffocate, but to fuel a creative fire he had long obscured beneath layers of obligation. With Emily by his side and Elena's analytical acumen guiding their discussions, they dove into the depths of his previous work while illuminating paths toward his future. As they meticulously evaluated each piece, Jack felt liberated. No longer was he tethered to a predetermined notion of success. Instead, he was chipping away at the marble block that had constrained him, carving out shapes that resonated with his evolving identity. "Jack," Emily excitedly pointed to a half-finished canvas layered with shadowy splotches and bright highlights. "This piece stands out. Remember when you expressed that feeling of being overshadowed? You brought those elements together beautifully." The recollection struck a chord within him. What he had once deemed chaotic was now the essence of authenticity pouring forth. "I did feel that contrast," he murmured. "It illuminates the struggle beautifully. I think it's time I framed it, not just as an emotion, but a celebration of transformation." "If this piece speaks so strongly to you and your identity," Elena chimed in, her eyes alight with newfound respect, "it may also resonate with others. It's a representation of the discord we all experience at some point." Jack nodded, his excitement igniting more than artistic ambition. It also implied a recognition within his family of the deeper emotional currents that inspire art. Days melted into each other, filled with vibrant discussion and intense creativity. Jack emerged, not just as an artist, but as a person, undeniably stronger, wiser, and more aware. Inspired by the conversations around the themes of struggle and identity, he sought to infuse real emotion into his work, forging deeper connections with the canvases. At long last, the day approached for his exhibition. An idea that had once seemed daunting now felt invigorating. Jack sensed a shift within himself. It was as though he had started a new chapter in an ongoing narrative. Uncertainty remained, but it was now cherry-picked with sparks of courage. The boy who once felt trapped in the confines of his father's legacy stood resolutely on the precipice of his own future. On the day of the exhibition, as guests entered the gallery, Jack's heart raced with a mixture of thrill and nerves. He watched people engage with his pieces, their faces reflecting a profound range of emotions as they connected with the art he had meticulously crafted. Jack stood adjacent to his most poignant piece, emboldened by the personal development he had made. His family arrived, standing together at the front of the gallery. Jack met his father's gaze, longing to connect beyond the barriers that had always kept them at odds. At that moment, an unexpected shift surged through the air as a burst of laughter from his sister lifted the tension, the joy intermingling with uncertainty. Jack decided to seize the moment, stepping forward. "Thank you all for coming," he began, his voice steady and strong. "This is more than just an exhibition. It's a reflection of my journey toward authenticity. It's a celebration of not letting fear dictate who I am." Jack caught his father's eye, gauging the emotions flickering there. For the first time, he felt supported in his vulnerability, an unspoken understanding blossoming like spring after a long winter. "I want to share this journey with you," he added with sincerity. "All of you have shaped me in ways I hadn't fully acknowledged until now. I hope these pieces help convey not only my story, but resonate with yours." As he unveiled his most heartfelt work, Jack witnessed his family's expressions shift from skepticism to recognition. Slowly, an understanding seemed to ripple through the crowd, the air electrifying. Perhaps, just perhaps, he was finally threading together the disparate pieces of family, legacy, and self-discovery. By the end of the night, Jack stood with a solid confidence, embraced by the warmth of those around him. The genuine compliments and emotional reactions from visitors reaffirmed his decision to prioritize authenticity over predetermined notions of success. The dialogue he had woven through his art became a bridge. His work now reflected reality, illuminating both his struggles and triumphs. Jack's journey had not only sculpted his identity, but gained him newfound respect from his family. He had proven that passion and creativity could coexist with earnest intent. Perhaps this revelation could rewrite the unwritten narrative reserved for him. The triumph felt complete as Jack allowed himself to realize the truth. He had transformed, not just into a competent artist, but into a man defined by resilience and authenticity. Now, as dawn broke on a new creative day, he stood fortified, ready to inscribe further chapters of his journey with his very own brush, a perfect day unfolding before him. Now it's time for you to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel for more emotional stories that inspire growth and transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep this channel alive. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, and comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Your thoughts could inspire someone else's journey.